I learned my trade on Land Rover Defenders back in 2007 while in the Royal Marines. I served until 2012 working on Land Rover Defenders. From 2012 when I left until 2015, I went through a 3-year patch of not owning Defenders and not working on them, and I just missed them so much. So then in 2015, I bought this TD5, and since then, over the last 10 years, I've owned and maintained it and modified it myself. So if this is the year you want to buy a Land Rover Defender, you're going to want to stick around to the end of the video to hear all these tips on what to look for when viewing a Land Rover Defender. Now, you want to be parked on flat level ground for this. You don't want to be in a puddle either. So if the vehicle is parked in a puddle, move it. And you want to be getting under the vehicle, having a good look around the chassis to see if there's any obvious signs of rust and things like that. If the owner agrees to it, you can have a little toffee hammer or a screwdriver, but obviously ask the owner first before you start hammering their chassis. If there is under seal in the vehicle, it can be a little bit difficult to find sort of potential rust and things like that. But just look in all the crevices and things like that. Look in all the nooks and crannies, especially the rear cross member, obviously, especially the outriggers as well. So we're going to go under the vehicle now. What you'll need is a really good light. This is about 100 watts. It's relatively cheap as well. It's about £20 at a good price. Obviously, if you wear glasses, then that's not an issue, but you're getting under an old Land Rover. The amount of times I see people going under cars and stuff and not wearing some sort of glasses, it just cringes me because I've had rust in my eye before, and it's really not fun. You have to go to hospital to get the rust out. So get a set of glasses and protect your eyes basically when you're going under cars, because you're going to be rummaging around, you're going to be banging it, you're going to be knocking it, and things are going to fall down and land on your face. So always wear a set of glasses. Start from a quarter, so start from the back quarter or the front quarter like this one here. This is the front left outrigger. You can actually get really nice covers that fit over this, and I might actually do this at some point. But if you get your hand down the back, again, look at that there. That's full of crap and things like that. Just really don't agree with chassis. They don't like being wet and muddy constantly, and they will rust and rot away all the underside of the chassis. So things like up here, you're always going to get rust gathering up here, right up in the crevices and things like that, right up in there, right in that crevice as well. You're always going to get stuff down there. So the chassis overall, you want to just be looking for crevice corrosion. It's not so much, oh yes, the chassis does look fine, that's okay, because anyone can paint a chassis what's rotten. But things like up here as well, on the tubular outrigger at the back, this can get corroded at the top there as well. Just wherever dirt can settle. Again, front arm as well, actually looks all right under there. So we got a little bit of corrosion on this fillet weld here. See, it started peeling away there, where the underseal's just got some water underneath it. Another big factor is, where's the vehicle located? Where are you buying it from? Are you buying it from coastal? Are you buying it from town? Are you buying it from Scotland, where there is a lot of salt on roads quite a lot more times of the year than in England? Now, the rear crossmember is a very, very common problem on Land Rover Defenders. Basically, all the crud just sits on the actual flange inside the crossmember, and it basically just rots away. There's a lot of exposure from the back here as well, where all the dirt gets flicked up and into the actual crossmember itself. And what I would say is just give it a tap all around. Does it feel hollow? Things like that. Obviously, you don't want to be absolutely hammering it because it's not your vehicle, it's the owner's vehicle. But if they're quite happy for you to like just chip away just little bits here and there just to see if it's solid, then obviously ask them for permission for that first. But what I would say is, if it has had a new rear cross member, I wouldn't be put off by that, because it's just so common for these things to be rotten. Obviously, you can see it from a mile off if it has had a new rear cross member, because there's basically a butt weld going right down the actual center, and obviously all around the where the rear cross member goes onto the chassis, both sides as well. The weld should be relatively parallel as well on both sides, and you can see this a mile off. But for example, my rear cross member here, it has had two very small plates welded onto the bottom. So again, I'm anticipating within sort of 5, maybe 10 years of either replacing the crossmember or replacing the chassis itself. It's just a very, very common problem. They start to delaminate, they start to rot. Once they rot, you can't really get them back. You know, you can sand it down every year, you can put rust converter onto it, then obviously liner guard and under seal over the top of it, but even then it's starting to bubble around here. But if the vehicle has had a new rear cross member, what I would like to see, or what you should be seeing as well, is an invoice and proof of what part was used. So was it a substandard part? Was it a good part? Things like that. So you want to be getting a feel for how good of a part was used on the new rear cross member. And was it invoiced? Had a garage done it? Had the garage welded it? Then you can sort of go on the garage website, see the credentials, see the reviews of that garage, see if they're any good, basically. If the owner had done it themselves, that's not an issue because some owners are very, very good welders. I'm personally not. I would love to be a good welder, but I'm just not. I may start. It's never too late to start, right? But I would want to definitely see an invoice, though. If the owner had welded it and had to put a new cross member on, they should be keeping the invoice to what part they used. And if they didn't keep the invoice, me personally, I would probably walk away because there's no proof of how good that part is and how good of a steel it is as well. Now, I love paperwork. I find it a little bit bizarre that not every owner keeps paperwork all nicely squared away in a little file. Like for the paperwork what I have for this, it's about that thick in a file over the last 10 years, all the receipts, all the invoices, all the parts what I put on it, everything from brake hoses to brake parts to the intercooler, to just everything. I keep everything, the wiper blade, invoices, the lot. And for me, this is a massive green tick. If you go to see a car and the owner goes, oh, by the way, here's all the paperwork for the last 10 years or the last 20 years or however long they've had it for, it's just such a reassuring thing to have. And a vehicle with no paperwork at all, I would be a bit hesitant to actually buy it. Checking the history of a vehicle is quite easy nowadays. We've got the government website checker, we've got other car checkers as well to check. But if you actually check the website of the government MOT history checker, you can see all the MOTs, what have been carried out over the last sort of 10 years and what it failed for. And if that failure has been rectified, so if it carried an advisory 1 year and it failed the next year, puts a little bit of a red flag in terms of that vehicle may not have been maintained as well as it could have been. Like any advisory for this, I would tend to do it there and then on the MOT. I wouldn't take my chance to go to the next one. I would always do an advisory on an MOT. But on the MOT history checker, you can see all the actual mileage as well. And does that mileage line up with the year date? Has it been reversed? Vehicle's been clocked or anything like that? It's quite easy to see the sequence of the mileage. Now, if the vehicle's been off the road, so sawn, things like that, so this was actually sawn during 2020 to 2022, which is quite common for vehicles, especially of a sort of hobby car as well. So if you go into view a Land Rover Defender and the owner doesn't use it as the main car, they may have sawned it during this time, so it's not really a red flag for me. Before we get on to the next tip, if you are finding this video helpful, please do consider hitting the like button and also consider hitting that hype button as well, so the channel reaches a broader audience and continues to grow. Now on to the next tip. So under the front of the vehicle here, and this is where we can check for a lot of oil leaks and a lot of issues with the engine. They're really easy to get under, so as long as you've got a set of overalls on, you can easily get underneath them. Now there's the old tale, if there's more than a £2 coin's worth that drops in 24 hours of oil, then you got a problem. If it's less than a £2 coin, it's generally alright. And then there's also, it's not leaking oil, it's just overflowing with awesomeness. And then there's my favourite, and this class is how we stop an oil leak on a Land Rover. So joking aside, we can basically get underneath it, get the glasses on, get underneath it, get your spotlight, get your light, and just have a good look around it under here. And you can obviously check the actual swivel seals, you can check both sides of the swivels. Now it's not uncommon for these to be leaking from the swivels, but just factor this in the cost of buying the Land Rover and factor it into the price, because the swivels, if you're not doing them yourself, they can cost up to about £1,000 just to get the swivels done and the bearings done. And the seals, is a swivel pitted as well? If the swivel's pitted, it'll need replacing. That's more cost. Now, all-terrain tyres fitted on Land Rover Defenders, they do wear them really well, and I think they do look really good on all-terrain tyres. The problem with all-terrain tyres, especially if you don't do a lot of mileage like this one here, is the tyres only tend to last for about 8 to 10 years until the rubber starts to degrade and then becomes genuinely unsafe in the wet. Prior to these AT3s, my Defender had AT2s on it, and there's a few times I drove it in the wet, it was a little bit skittish, and it shouldn't really be skittish. You know, this is a four-wheel drive vehicle. Obviously, it's off-road bias, but it still should be able to drive on the road at the speeds I drive at anyway and not feel skittish. So the AT tyres, they can last to about 40,000 miles plus. And if you only do 2,000 to 3,000 miles a year or 5,000 miles a year like I do, these tyres can be on the vehicle for a very, very long time. And what I would always say to someone who's going to check or going to view a Land Rover Defender to potential to buy it is, are the tyres matching for a start? Are all four tyres matching brands? And it's not a red flag if they're not. I personally would always replace tyres like for like on each axle, front and back. Now there is a code on tyres what you can look at, and it's really easy to find as well. It's on all tyres, all European tyres anyway. I don't know about American tyres, so you'll have to do the research yourself, but certainly on all European tyres, there's a code on it and it says the week and the year it was manufactured. So you go basically 8 to 10 years from that year, and then they will need replacing. So as you can see on my grabbers here, week 43, year 2020 is when the tyre was manufactured. And obviously you've got your E stamp for European, but that's the number what you want to see. So these tyres, no matter how good or how bad they are, by 2030, I'll need to replace them. Now, under the bonnet of the vehicle, now I would specifically request to the owner of the vehicle to not start it and basically not have it warm. I want to start this vehicle and I want to inspect it from absolute stone cold. If the vehicle, what I went to go and see, was obviously nice and warm and the temperature gauge was in the middle and everything was up to temperature, I would just be suspicious. It would put a massive red flag in my head and saying, why has this vehicle been started from cold? Are there problems with the starting from cold? Are there problems with the glow plugs? There could be a multitude of problems associated with the cold starting issue of the vehicle. And if the vehicle is obviously left cold, you can then hear all the rattles, all the squeaks, everything like that. And when the vehicle settles in, it's fine. Now, these vehicles aren't the best from cold. Unlike a modern vehicle, what heats up in sort of like 5 to 10 minutes maximum, these take about 15 to 20 minutes of constant driving to heat up. It's kind of like me when I'm running. You know, I can complain a lot. I'm a little bit stiff for the first 2-3 kilometers. And after that, I tend to be all right. A Puma isn't quite the same. A Puma does tend to heat up a little bit quicker, but certainly the old TDIs do take a long time to heat up. And when the vehicle's cold starting, you can just hear all the squeaks and rattles and all the bearings and all the pulleys and everything just complaining about being cold. And that's a good thing. We want to hear everything what's wrong with this vehicle because potentially we want a little bit of money off it, don't we? This thing starts up, it squeaks a little bit, could be a pulley, could be a belt. That's 50 to 100 pounds, depending if you get it fitted or not. Now, one of the things to check is the actual vehicle identification tag here. The VIN plate is on this, on the brake servo, on the brake reservoir on the back there. And does it match the VIN plate in the windscreen as well? And basically, if them two match, you know, take a pen and paper, write both of them down. Did it match? Yes, they do. Or take a picture on your phone, then look at them then. And then look into the paperwork, look into the service history. Does it all match? Does it all look tying together? Now, there is a third stamp on the chassis down on the actual driver's side. Now, you can't always see this because sometimes it's covered in underseal, sometimes it's covered in like paint. So it'll be down to the owner. Are they happy for you to wire brush it and to check the VIN tag on that? Obviously, if the owner has spent a lot of money getting his chassis or their chassis shot blasted, painted with a really good corrosion resistant paint, they don't want to be sanding it down or grinding it down for you to have a look at the VIN plate. You're just going to have to respect that in terms of they don't want to sand it down or don't want to wire brush the underseal or paint off the chassis. While you're under here as well, get a good look at the actual oil cap as well. Make sure there's not any sort of like white crud on it as well. Could indicate an issue with the actual head gasket or anything like that. Get a look at a dipstick as well to see what colour the oil is. Is it losing oil? This is obviously at the full mark. It actually doesn't look too bad. The oil had not long replaced it. Again, coolant as well. Is there enough coolant in it? Is there any stuff underneath the actual cap of the coolant? Again, there's nothing under there, so it's fine. And the level is at the cold level where it should be. Obviously, if the vehicle is warm, don't take this off because it will blow steam in your face. And overall, is there any leaks? This is obviously the TD5, so you can go to my video if you're looking for a TD5 or the common problems, the 15 hidden problems, what could be wrong with the TD5. That's linked now. But overall, we're just going to be focusing on Land Rover Defender generic because they're all the same. They just have different engines in them. So down there is basically the footwell of the actual vehicle. So you want to be getting right down there, having a good look, getting your really high inspection light, getting it down there. Obviously the surface rust down there, but you want to be tapping it and things like that. That's basically the bulkhead of the vehicle. Same for both sides as well, so you can do both sides while you're at it. And also down here as well, is there any water pooling down there? And just any obvious signs of corrosion, things like that. So corrosion's always going to be hidden. It's very, very easy to manage corrosion, say like down there, through there. You know, it's nicely painted with underseal and nicely managed. Corrosion's always going to be hidden. So always look in the nooks and crannies of the vehicle. Always look in the crevices of the vehicle. That's where the corrosion is going to be located. It's not going to be in the really obvious places. Now, while we're under the bonnet of the vehicle, it's a very popular thing to do to modify these vehicles. The Land Rover Defender TD5 only has about 122 horsepower from new, so it's quite underpowered in the terms of how much weight it has to carry and how much weight it has to lug around. Even the 90 weighs quite a bit. So it's very common to put a remap on these. Now, this currently doesn't have a remap on it, and that's not to say that I'm not going to get one because I do really want a remap on it because I do feel it very underpowered. But it does have an intercooler fitted, ready for a stage 2 remap to be done. And this is where you want to be checking the paperwork again. So has the owner kept a record of the remap? Where was it done? Was it done by a reputable company? Was it done by, you know, your mate in the back street garage or whatever? Or was it just tweaked and tinkered with like a sort of TDI can be done? Has it been dynoed as well? What sort of power are we talking? You know, has the clutch been uprated? Have the brakes been uprated? So obviously you can make it faster, but you got to stop it better as well, and you got to make it handle better. You can't just put a heap of power in something and expect it to go around the corner, expect it to stop, because it won't. And while we're on to modifications as well, so you want to be looking at the emission control system as well. So things like the EGR, things like the catalytic converter, things like the DPF, if fitted. And these things, basically, if they're not fitted to the vehicle, and they're supposed to be fitted as standard, it's an MOT failure. Now, the EGR is located underneath this acoustic cover on the TD5. This EGR is still fitted to the vehicle, and you can actually feel if it has been fitted or not, but you can actually take this acoustic cover off. There's only like 2 bolts there and 1 bolt here. You can easily take it off, no problem. Or you can ask the owner to take it off for you. So things like the Pumas, the EGR does clog up and things like that. It does put a lot of exhaust gas back into the inlet manifold. That's his job, basically, to recycle the exhaust gas, to put it back into the inlet manifold. But you get a lot of carbon buildup, so it's a very popular modification to get rid of the EGR. There's arguments for and against it. Obviously, for is the emissions, against is it just runs better and it's more fuel efficient, but it puts out more NOx. So if the EGR isn't fitted to the vehicle, that's not necessarily a red flag, but I would want that EGR to be included in the sale. If the cat's been deleted, I would want the old cat included in the sale, just so you can put it back on, basically, without costing you any more money. So if you take it to a garage and they fail it, saying there's no emission control on it, at least you've got the option to then put it back on. One word of caution, if the EGR has been taken off, or the cat has been taken off, or the DPF has been taken off, it needs to be remapped to say to the vehicle that it has been taken off. So then if you go and put all these things back without remapping it again to tell it's been back to stock, then you can have issues with black smoke and underperformance and things like that. So you want to just be a bit savvy about it. You want to be asking the right questions. So has the vehicle been remapped? Or the emission control hardware still in place? If not, can they be included in the sale? And can the original remap be done? So you want to be doing your own research here, and you want to be happy with what you've bought as well. So you want to get it in daylight. You want to have a good look around it. You can obviously look around it in a garage, but it's just not as good as natural light in terms of looking at body panels. It's obviously howling with wind at the minute, but it's winter in Scotland. It's just our norm. So what I would always do, I would always just start from one quarter. It doesn't matter if you start from the front, the back, or the other side, but I would always start from one quarter. So if I start from the back here, I would just work my way around in terms of the vehicle, work my way around to the front, and obviously go around to the back. And looking up and down the vehicle, we are going to expect aluminium corrosion on something this age. So 20 years old, living in a salty environment, we're always going to get like corrosion on the aluminium. Panel gaps as well. These are obviously hand built back in the day in Solihull, and we're always going to get discrepancies with the actual panel gap. So for example, I can see here the door sits inwards more than it does outwards, so it's not quite level there. But that's just the joy of hand-built vehicles in England in the sort of early 2000s. So if it's got side steps as well, you can always use the side steps to look on top of the roof, because you don't actually look at the top of the roof very often on Land Rovers. Look on there. Is it discoloured? Is it faded? No, it looks all right. Have a look for them little bits there. So there's actually a bracket on the other side there. So there's a steel bracket on aluminium. So we're going to get galvanic corrosion there, corrosion of the similar materials. So obviously down here we've got some aluminium corrosion, oxidization of the aluminium, which is a very, very common problem if the vehicle does have checker plate fitted. So right down the back there, obviously it's very, very easy to hide things behind checker plate. So this is the issue, what I have with checker plate personally. You know, you're not going to cut that out and repair it properly. You're just going to put checker plate over the top of it. So just be cautious about checker plate. It can hide a lot of things. You want to be inspecting the hinges down here. These hinges are a little bit rusty, but they're not too bad. So actually inspect the hinge properly. Open the door. Give it a good wriggle. There's not much movement in there. There is a little bit of movement, and while you're down here as well, have a look at the bottom of the door. Make sure there's no rust here. It rusts really badly underneath this door. And does the door close? It closes fine. And does it open fine? Yes, it does. So there's a solid close of that door. Check the other door as well to make sure that's fine as well. Check the back door to make sure that's fine. And just basically have a good look around at all the bodywork and things like that. Has it been resprayed? If it's been resprayed, is there an invoice for the respray? If there's not, we could have an issue there. You know, if it's a full respray and there's no invoice, has the owner just hand painted it and just basically hidden loads of issues? So it's all tracing down to the paperwork, and it's all, is the paperwork fine? Does the paperwork tie in with what's been done? This is obviously period feature. This has never been resprayed or never been touched up, as you can see from the obviously the corrosion down the bottom there. So is the vehicle just an honest vehicle? And if it's an honest vehicle and it's got the paperwork to back it up, then you're halfway there. You just got to do the inspection yourself. So you want to be looking underneath the mats as well. So obviously I put some soundproofing under here and some soundproofing under there, but this is where the bulkhead is. This is where it rusts and rots as well. So if you can actually take some of this stuff out and have a look at it, it's definitely worth doing. Now the seat belts always get frayed. This is why I have these seat belt covers on. So if you can see here, the seatbelt started to fray a little bit, and that's because it sags like that and then gets caught in the door hinge there, and then obviously when you slam the door on it, then you damage the seatbelt. Always get picked up on the MOT. The amount of times I replaced these in the Marines was just crazy. In the end, Land Rover put a modification on for the UK Forces models and basically just put a massive plastic sheath over this bit here. But I'm quite happy with this thing, with this pad here, the seatbelt pad. It does its job totally fine. Now aluminium corrosion, if you actually pull this bit up here, pull it up there, and this is actually Vaseline here. This isn't oxidization, this is just Vaseline, where I had to put the new door seal on. To get it fitted I use a bit of Vaseline, but you can see here it started to rust a little bit, and when I say rust I mean aluminium corrosion. Started to go there a little bit, but it's not too bad for a car that's 20 years old. Headlining as well, is the headlining sagging? This is obviously in good condition. So if you made it this far, you must really love Land Rovers and love Land Rovers as much as I do too. So do consider subscribing to the channel for plenty more content to come this year. So you've deemed that it's safe to test drive the vehicle. You know, you've inspected everything, you've inspected it underneath, you've looked at the oils, you've looked at everything like that. So you're now in a position ready to test drive the vehicle. Obviously you want to start it from cold, and you want to test drive it from cold. Now, as I mentioned before, these vehicles aren't the best from cold. If you've never driven one before, I would just go very, very cautious when you're actually test driving it from cold. I would just go really careful for the first, say, 10 minutes of driving. Every gear should be very, very deliberate and things like that. It will feel notchy, everything will feel cold, but once these do warm up, they are just so good to drive. I just love driving mine. And this is why I just keep it for a weekend car. I just don't want to have it as a daily. You may want it as a daily, but I just love Land Rovers and I love Defenders. So the gearboxes should feel quite tight. They should feel quite deliberate as well in terms of a nice feel to them as well. The clutch should feel okay as well. In traffic, you may have to actually push your foot down with your arm, so like that. But once you get used to it and you get your quads built up, you'll be totally fine. The brake pedal as well, the brake pedal you basically have to like stamp on, rather than like in a car you would rest your heel. You basically have to drive it as you would drive like an old lorry. So you'd be pressing down on it rather than pushing side on it. So things to check in here, obviously, are the gauges working? Does the fuel gauge work? When you start it up, stick it in low range, give it a quick test in low range. Does it sound like it's revving? Yes, it does. Stick it in high range, stick it in diff locks. Does the light come on in the diff locks? Yes, it does. No, it doesn't. Then you've got an issue. Does the light go out when you take it out of the diff locks? So you just want to be operating things as if you operate any vehicle. If you take it for a test drive, you know, does it have electric windows? Do they work? This doesn't. It has keep fit windows up and down, but they all work fine. So this isn't an exhaustive list of everything what's on a Land Rover Defender, but it's definitely a start. And if you get a good feel for it, if the paperwork's right, the bodywork's okay, no massive corrosion, and obviously the price is right. It depends totally on what you're after. If you're after a doer-upper, if you're after something what you can drive daily, now don't be afraid to walk away. I viewed a few Land Rover Defenders before I bought my one, and I walked away from two of them because one of them, the chassis was absolutely rotten, and the guy had priced it highly, basically, in terms of this is a good car or this is a good vehicle. And he'd ended up saying to me, oh, you can just replace the chassis, it's easy enough. Well, yes, it is, but There's also a lot of work involved in it, and there's also a lot of cost involved in it. Take that into account. It can cost you thousands if you get it wrong, and there's also plenty of companies out there who do inspections as well. So I hope you found all these tips helpful. Do consider subscribing along, and check this video out if you're after a Land Rover Defender TD5. I'll see you next time.